Jimmy Savile went from national treasure to national disgrace overnight. The lurid stories of his sexual depravity surfaced from the murky depths of his 50-year reign over our televisions. Now seen as Britain's most notorious paedophile, the popular press described his actions as those of a monster. But was there a darker motivation for his crimes? Was Savile in fact a trans-dimensional sorcerer who harvested occult energies to feed his hunger for power? James Wilson Vincent Savile was born on October the 31st in 1926. He was the seventh son,
which in ancient folklore meant you were born with magical powers.
His co-workers suspected he was a witch. As a Bevan boy, Jimmy Savile's fellow miners thought Jimmy Savile was a witch.
Now then, nobody but nobody ever did 8 hours down a pit and came back as immaculate as the set-off with white shirt and everything like that. They were quite convinced that I was a witch. If you go to South Kirby now, you'll get some of the old miners when you say, Jimmy Savile's done well, hasn't he? Ah, and he'll look around and he'll say, he's not what you think you know. The forces of darkness are at work there.
He had influence over people from all walks of life.
A stray television crew, a dozen reporters, 1,000 autographs. He attracts attention like a Roman candle. Jimmy Savile feeds off people.
Jimmy Savile liked to mix with people from all walks of life, by day crisscrossing the country to meet the man on the street, and by night hobnobbing with the rich, famous and influential. Here are just a few of the people he knew or had associated with. The Beatles, Peter Sutcliffe, the Pope, Ephraim Katzir, Elvis, Esther Ranson, Margaret Thatcher, Ted Heath, Gary Glitter, Norman Tebbit.
I remember so well you at Stoke.
Diana Spencer, Prince Charles, Prince Philip, Frank Bruno, Alan Franey, and many, many, many police chiefs. Savile was also a Knight of Malta, a Knight Commander of St. Gregory, and a Knight of the Realm. Jimmy Savile seemed to know everybody, yet nobody seemed to know Jimmy Savile. Publicly, he played the part of court jester, but privately, he held an almost Jedi-like position of influence over the highest and lowest life forms of British society. What was it that made Savile so popular? Was it his looks? His wit? Or his charm? Or was it something more sinister? In October 2012, the Sunday Sport, the only British newspaper still bold enough to print uncensored stories, quoted Savile discussing how he discovered he could hypnotise girls.
To demonstrate, you'll see, and choosing a girl who was already fast asleep in her easy chair, I stood behind her, passing myself off as first her mother, then her father, you'll see, and finally boyfriend. We had a lively patter going. I was convinced she was awake, you'll see, and just playing along with me. Taking again the part of her mother and asking her what she was doing in bed with all her clothes on, sweet horror, did she not stand up, you see, and start to undress? Telling her to stop, and in the nick of time, as it had been a warm evening, she was handed to her girlfriend with instructions to be put to her bed. The next morning, you see, expecting to be denounced and dismissed, I was shattered with relief when she stood next to me in the breakfast queue and gave not the slightest sign of recognition, you'll see. Now then, years later, in the Isle of Man, I met Joseph Karma, one of the great hypnotists. telling him the story, he was not surprised, you see, and suggested I should study under him and not finish up in the neck.
The Isle of Man is well known as the centre of Wicca in Britain, where Gerald Gardner, the father of modern witchcraft, ran a museum devoted to the faith.
What I remember so well is taking him into the Palace of Westminster. I've taken many guests in over the years, but he's the only one who was simply waved through security.
He used magical signs and language.
Let's analyse the phrase Jingle Jangle. It can be broken down into two words: jingle, a catchy array of words in prose or verse, and jangle, which means to chatter, argue noisily, or whine. Although both share the same Germanic root, jengelin, jingle evolved to mean a catchy song in an advert, and jangle to mean a whiny or discordant sound. However, we have also noted the yin-yang, phonetic, abstract, onomatopoeic nature of the phrase. Jingle jangle is also an autological phrase. It describes itself. It is both a jingle and a jangle.
In the occult world, language is an extremely powerful tool. Since ancient times, magic words have been used by magicians to cast spells and invoke spirits. Some are well known to us now, but others have remained obscured through the ages by the secret groups who still use them to this day. This is why we spell words.
Take a word like abracadabra.
Abracadabra is an incantation used as a magic word in stage magic tricks. The first known mention of the word was in the 3rd century AD in a book called Liber Medicinalis. During the Great Plague, Londoners were said to have posted the word on their doorways to ward off sickness. Aleister Crowley, the infamous magician, regarded it as possessing great power. He said its true form is Abracadabra. So even a seemingly harmless word can have a more deep and esoteric meaning, and a much more powerful and potentially harmful effect than presumed.
It all depends on the intention.
When words are repeated 3 times, it is said to increase the effectiveness of the phrase. This is an ancient belief known to us as the rule of 3. Its use is largely unconscious. We prefer things in threes. It suggests wholeness or completeness, and although it features heavily in many religious texts, it is also encoded into our modern myths.
There's no place like home.
No, no, no.
No, say it loud. Say it twice. Learn down the charm.
Education, education, and education.
Words.
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 There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
Now then.
Now then. Now then.
Now then. Now then. Now then. Now then.
Now then. Now then. Now then. Now then.
Now then. Now then.
Did Savile use this phrase to create a specific mind state in his audience? By repeating the words now and then 3 times, was he attempting to penetrate deep into a subconscious level of the psyche? And was he deliberately using 2 opposing words, now and then, to further confuse and mesmerise? Once under his spell, the nation was powerless to the persuasive nature of the magician who could manipulate perception of reality for his own gratification.
You could say he groomed a nation.
Jimmy Savile loved the limelight and crowds loved him.
Jimmy was a wonderful man. His public face is well known, but we knew him much more as an uncle. He was a very good friend.
He was a very special man. You've got to go a million, billion miles to find another man like him, you know what I mean? A class amongst himself.
But I have a magic chair that does all sorts of things. 1, 2, 3, hey presto.